Let me tell you of when God created the very boundary of reality itself, whom our ancestors called Themis. Before the first dawn, there was only the Aperon, the boundless. It was a sea of infinite roaring potential, a chaos too vast to have a name and too deep to have a floor, the abyss of space itself. In that void, there was no here or there, no right or wrong, for there were no lines to separate them. Then the Father spoke. His voice was the Logos, and as that word vibrated through the void, it began creation. His greatest act was this: a line was drawn into the darkness, and divine law was formed. That line was the primordial boundary, Themis. She was the Paris, the great limit. Where she stood, the chaos had to stop. She was the thus far and the no further. When God separated the sea from the earth, she was the shoreline. By her presence, the sea was pushed back to make room for the earth. By her weight, the sky was lifted to make room for the breath. She was the divine geometry that ensured the cosmos would not dissolve back into the silence of the void. Nothing false escaped her sight, and nothing without weight endured her scale. By her, each thing was kept within its nature, and all that was made was preserved from confusion. But the Father knew that the world he built was heavy. He knew that the weight of existence would press down on the hearts of men. So, from the dust of the earth, he fashioned a race of stone, a people meant to be pillars. He whispered into their souls the Themis, the 7 sub-boundaries that hold up the roof of civilization, and he gave them to Themis as daughters, that by them the house of man might stand. For a long time, the world was true. Under her measure, the roof held, the hearth endured, and the generations knew their place under the vault. Men looked at the plumb line of the heavens and built their cities straight. They respected the shoreline between the human and the divine. As long as they lived within the Paris, the Catacomb, the great restrainer and guardian stood at the gate of the abyss between chaos and order, holding the handle of the door shut, tasked with keeping lawlessness at bay before its time. In time, the stone grew weary. The descendants of the stone race began to look at the boundary not as a shield, but as a prison. Why should there be a limit? They whispered. Are we not gods? Should we not be as boundless as the Apiron? One by one, they took their hammers to the 7 pillars. They hacked at the pillar of truth, Aletheia, until the yes and the no became the same gray mist. They chipped away at the pillar of piety, Eusebia, until they no longer looked up at the heavens, but only into the mirrors of their own pride. This was hubris, the act of stepping over Themis. As the pillars crumbled, the wall began to lean. The catacomb grew thin, a ghost of a force trying to hold back a rising tide. The world became lawless. Names began to loosen. Oaths grew thin. The holy and the profane no longer stood apart. And what had long pressed at the gate now found welcome in the hearts of men. This was the spirit of Antichrist, the Anomos, rejoicing wherever boundary was despised and form was undone. The people did not realize that by erasing the lines, they were erasing themselves. For without boundary, form fails, order collapses, and the whole structure begins to come apart. But the hatred of men did not stop at the pillars. For when a people can no longer bear the measure, when every weighing reveals them diminished, hollow, and fallen beneath what they were made to be, they did not humble themselves. They turned upon the witness. The gaze of Themis revealed their shame, and rather than be made true, they chose to mutilate the one who proved them wanting. So they came for Themis, not with petitions, as children once came before a mother, but with iron and accusation, They cursed the measure that named them lesser than the form they boasted of. They reviled the gaze that found them thin in substance and empty in oath. They called holy order a cruelty and restraint a chain, and they laid violent hands upon the lady of boundaries, and they tore out her eyes. Then there was silence, and in the silence Themis took up a white band with her own hand, and veiled the wounds where sight had dwelt. It was not done for comfort, but for testimony. And from beneath the white cloth there fell one slow tear of blood. Then she lifted her face toward God and spoke.
O Ancient of Days, Lord of the first line, hear now my voice. They have torn out my eyes, and had strength been granted them, they would have torn out my tongue also. Yet I speak still, so the stone-born remember my testimony. Behold my 7 daughters, the pillars I bore for the keeping of men. Aletheia, truth, they dragged through the courts of men, and clothed in the garments of liars. Eusebeia, piety, they cast from the holy thresholds, and laughed at in the streets. Dikaiosune, justice, they dragged through the gates of judgment, and forced to kneel while verdicts were bought in coin. Sophrosyne, restraint, they beat in the square, and called her barrenness, while appetite was enthroned as freedom. Pistis, faith, they kissed with false mouths, and cast aside before dawn. Elios, mercy, they made handmaid to wolves, while the innocent cried out uncovered. Andrea, courage, they stripped of honor, and clothed in the costume of madness. Behold also the people. The stone-born have become a nation of Epicureans. The daughters of Lilith have cast aside their husbands, and taken Planos into their chambers, preferring the whispering lie to the weight of covenant. The sons of dust kneel to Hedon for counsel, and call cowardice liberty. They have confounded man and woman, and made sport of the ancient joining. They have despised the form given them, and made war upon the names by which they were called. They have forgotten the distance between the mortal and the divine. They have cursed the height above them, and called their own dust sufficient. They do not ascend in reverence, but swell upward in presumption. They say, we are as gods. And because judgment tarries, they say the heavens are empty, and that all reverence was the sickness of lesser ages. They flee the altar, lest covenant lay a hand upon them. They flee the cradle, lest the fruit of their pleasure demand a name. They break the vow, and call it freedom. They despise the burden, and call it peace. They swallow shame, and call it maturity. They mock form, and call it wisdom. They do not blush before sin. They do not tremble before heaven. They do not remember the weight that once made them pillars. The line remains, yet they spit upon it. The gate remains, yet they beat upon it. The sea remembers its ancient claim. Hear now my testimony, O Pantocrator, judge of all the earth, and let all creation know that Themis did not keep silence.
This was the moment of the great measuring. The Father held the plumb line of Themis against the cities of men. He did not look with anger, but with the disciplined eyes of an architect. He saw that the structure was no longer true. The lean was terminal. The integrity was gone. He did not have to strike the world down. He simply stepped back and removed the catacomb. And what they had called freedom was revealed at last as gluttony, the appetite of the abyss, which swallows all things and is never satisfied. Without the restrainer, the shoreline vanished. The Apiron, the ancient hungry sea of chaos, remembered the space it used to own. It rushed back in, not as a punishment, but as the necessity of a broken order. The earth was swallowed because it had lost the strength to remain. The stone race was ground into sand because they had forgotten how to be pillars. And in the center of the storm stood Themis, the inflexible, blindfolded now, yet not silent, wounded, yet unbent. She did not flee, for she is the law. She stood as the world unraveled back into the void, waiting for the Logos to speak once more, to draw a new line, and to call forth a new city, one built as a perfect cube, where the boundary is so perfect that the chaos can never return. The plumb line still hangs in the dark. It hangs above every soul. Now you have seen the unseen. Will you stand straight beneath it